Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praise to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Kakadash, Dellonas, the elders and apostles of Great Millstone, who are teaching this truth in sincerity. And shout out to Yakims out there in the four quarters of the earth proclaiming this truth. Barak the Yahweh, Barak the Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Kakadash, Brakatam. So, week 2, beginning of phase 2 of World War III. And it's already been declared that it's World War III. And like everything else, so Operation True Promise 4 has delivered quite a crushing blow to the enemy, as they had no choice but to admit that Russia has been providing intelligence on where Iran's, where the targets are, right? And like everything else, though, these allies that are allied with Babylon the Great in West Asia are finding out that the U.S. is not going to protect their countries from the incoming retaliatory attacks. In fact, they're only protecting one country, and that's the Israeli state. The Zionist entity is the only one that they're protecting. So eventually, as this all unveils, they are not going to be with Babylon. In fact, they are looking to cut off all trade with Babylon. United Arab Emirates, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia are finding out that, it is that way. And Kuwait as well is saying, why should we have any interaction with the U.S. if they can't even protect us from the retaliatory strikes, right? Because, again, they're only protecting the Israeli state. They're not providing those places with any defenses. And they only give a shit about using the military bases to conduct their terrorist strikes against Iran, which has hit a school. It's been confirmed that the U.S. did this, not the Israeli state. And it's also coming out that Donald Trump talked King Bibi into launching this war of terror, that the U.S. would have him. And so, like everything else, Donald Trump is the one that invoked this war, the man of peace, right? And this is causing confusion, right, amongst the city of confusion, because, it was supposed to be America first, not Israel first, and they're beginning to question everything about him, right? Question everything. So like everything else, that's setting the Egyptians against the Egyptians, which the scriptures talk a lot about this. But the city of confusion is being broken down, right? They can't even get their stories straight, right? They can't even sell this war the way they were supposed to. Oh, Iran's close to getting a nuclear weapon. Was a threat to the U.S. when their own offices said that Iran was not going to attack the U.S., that they don't have any long-range weapons capable of hitting the U.S., that all their weaponry was all within short range, that they could never reach the U.S. itself. But they can, however, penetrate the bases hosting them. So like everything else, their defenses have been smashed, have been destroyed, because, yes, Russian intelligence has been providing them. And so that's breaking them down, man. That's exhausting all their stockpiles. While Iran says, okay, we got rid of all our old shit, now we got some of our good shit starting to come out in phase 2. And so yesterday, of course, Trump doubled down and said, oh, well, we're going to hit them hard today. Well, yeah, they did fire at their field reserves, and they did destroy a stadium, where they usually host sports. So they did destroy the Tehran stadium that hosts sports. And they've hit 36 schools so far in their war of aggression, as well as killing their leader, Ayatollah Khamenei. And rumor has it that they did injure the new Ayatollah, Khamenei's son, in one of their attacks. So I don't know if that's confirmed or not, but nonetheless, though, he's doubled down, saying that, the attacks will continue until he's exhausted Iran, until they don't want to fight anymore, and that he demands unconditional surrender, which Iran has already responded and says they will take that to the graves, every last one of them. You see, like everything else, though, these are the days of vengeance, says the Most High. They would take vengeance upon Esau, Edom, and we're seeing it, play out. And like everything else, though, there's pressure upon Gog to take an even more interactive role. Yes, it's been proven that they've provided Russian intelligence, but he needs to take a bigger role. This is the pressure that's coming, because like everything else, though, they know that Syria had fallen, so they're putting pressure on Gog, on Putin, to actually take more of an active role, and not let Iran fall, and to protect everything there, right? And like everything else, though, U.S. Bases, have been totally obliterated, especially in Bahrain and Dubai. All those places have been destroyed because, like everything else, though, this is going to continue to escalate because they're finding out that the U.S. is not protecting those states. In fact, they're letting them just get hit. They're not doing anything to protect them because they're only protecting Israeli interests. And that's what the start of this war was all about, was to pretty much to save Trump's ego, because he's been so egotistical since the taking down of Venezuela's leader, Nicolas Maduro, that he's been on a rampage. And he said he's going to take over Cuba afterward as well. And the Israeli state has doubled down on that too, saying that, after we hit Iran, we're going to go after Turkey as well. Their former minister said, that, we're going to go after Turkey as well, that we have plans to take down Turkey. And there's another rumor that going around that they have, in fact, penetrated the road that leads into Iran, from where they could use Kurdish forces to go in to invade Iran. Because no U.S. soldier really wants to get into a ground war, though they've now admitted that this is going to be more than 4 to 6 weeks. They had to admit that this is going to last all the way through September, says Pete Hegseth, a fucking douche, right? So a lot of disruptions happening. This is, Saddam Hussein said it years ago, and it's hilarious because he said that, when they launched their war of aggression against Iraq back then, that this was the mother of all battles, meaning that there would be many more battles to come. It was always about a war with Iran, that they had to take down all these other countries, because guess who's been, getting the U.S. to do it? King Bibi, right? Even before he was a prime minister, he was out there, saying that Iran must never have a bomb, and that Iran must be taken out, but we need to take out all these other countries, right? So through all these false flag events, and they try to create some more false flag events to say that Iran's retaliatory strikes struck civilian infrastructure, that struck, hotels and all that, and they're finding out that the Israeli state is the one that's doing it. It's detonating these bombs, and it's just to try to draw everybody into this war. The only ones that they've really drawn into this war is the U.S. Now, of course, the U.K. has allowed bombers to actually enter into their territory, but you've got 50,000 plus people protesting this war in London. All that was happening on week 2, beginning of week 2, right? Week 1 of World War III has ended, now entering into phase 2 of World War III. So it's exciting times to be alive. And like everything else, though, we're seeing the downfall of Esau Edom, because they can't even get their stories straight. They can't get their facts right, and people know that they're being lied to, that, Iran's trying to build a nuclear weapon, but they claim to have destroyed all their nuclear facilities last year. Trump bragged about it. But now they're close to building a nuclear weapon. We said they couldn't have a nuclear weapon, using the same lies over and over again. And to sell the war even better, we didn't start this war. This war's been going on for 47 years. We're ending this war. That's another lie that they're trying to sell the people, right? But like everything else, so the Most High is setting the Egyptian against the Egyptian, right? Because you already see how many people worship Donald Trump, no matter what Donald Trump does. All hail to the king, bow down to the king. And this is that fierce king and cruel Lord that's spoken of in Isaiah chapter 19. They all bow down to their king, but then there's many that oppose them as well. So you got city against city and kingdom against kingdom, leading towards civil unrest. And it's going to pick up a lot, because they're finding out that this man of peace, even Republicans that once supported him, found out that, wait a minute, he launched us into some wars that we can't get out of. So even they are starting to turn now. Like everything else, though, they did reject a vote to try to stop his war powers, and they did turn that down. But at the same time, though, a lot of people are not in favor of this war, and a lot of people are. So you see how it's divided, right? A house divided cannot even stand. And then you have disagreements within their own ranks between Rubio and Hegseth and everybody else just arguing there, because they didn't expect this kind of retaliatory attacks. And they had to admit, after displaying those soldiers on TV, they had to admit that after a while that it's a lot more than just 4 soldiers killed, that in fact over 1,000 U.S. troops have been killed in retaliatory strikes. And they had to admit that Russia is helping. They had to go mainstream because it was too much all over the alternative media. which, like everything else, though, they say that they sunk 32 Navy vessels. I mean, you want to talk about fucking gaslighting. Trump is really gaslighting. He said that they took out Iran's Air Force. They took down Iran's capabilities. Then why all these retaliatory attacks if you're winning the war? You're not winning the war. You are definitely lying to the people. In fact, you're losing the war. You've already lost the war. All the bases have been confounded, you know. And you had to retreat to USS Lincoln. These aircraft carriers that you brag so much about has already retreated one of them and bringing in another. Yeah, they had to retreat to the Sea of Oman because of the fact that the aircraft carrier Lincoln was already hit. So they have to bring in another strike group, you know, just to even bring in, to even continue with theirs. So they're launching sorties still from these bases, you know, but like everything else, though, any attack against Iran will result in retaliatory strikes, and these countries hosting them are finding out that the U.S. doesn't give two flying fucks about them. They'll just use their bases, but that's about it. They're not protecting them at all. It's just collateral damage. And hey, here's what he thinks about U.S. soldiers. You know, Donald Trump already said that's just the way that it is. So people die in a war. So fucking what? You know, basically. You know, just like Hillary Clinton. What difference does it make, right? You know, Trump's family is okay. Bibi's family is okay, but your family isn't. You're going to have your son come in a box. And a lot of Israelites are going to die in this war. Going to die in World War III. See, you're on a runaway train and you ain't coming back. You ain't coming back from this. You ain't bouncing back from this. No, this is World War III. And like everything else, though, Gog and Magog, well, you know, they're going to be sending in their troops. Gomer and all his troops are going to be involved. See, because they also have plans to attack Turkey. And of course, the Israeli state, doing what they do best, have invaded Lebanon, you know, under the guise of fighting Hezbollah. But Hezbollah has risen up in this. You know, jihad has been declared, and they have risen up. And you're going to see even more attacks in the other place where they are retreating. Eventually, Yemen is going to become more involved with this. You see, like everything else, though, jihad is pretty much you know, gets declared when, you know, the aggressors declared this war during the month of Ramadan. You know, they declared the war. Now, they try to spin the story that Iran declared the war. How can they declare a war when it was the U.S. and Israeli state that went in, killed the Ayatollah, bragged about killing the Ayatollah? Yeah, there was people in Kuwait dancing. You know, Yad Jaquim fucking dancing and celebrating the death of Ayatollah Khomeini, and then the retaliatory strikes began. And like everything else, so they try to demonize Iran for defending its sovereignty, right? You know, that's what they keep on saying about the Israeli state as they attack all these countries. Oh, they're just defending their right to exist, right? You know, Israel has a right to exist. That's what they keep on using for their bloody war in Gaza. And like everything else, though, you see how this has turned out. You see that they're not winning the war. You know, for those that are actually paying attention, they ain't duped into believing what the mainstream says, that even the mainstream has to now say that over 1,000 have been killed in this war. And that's just the way that it is. You know, but we taken out their defenses, and we sunk 32 of their naval ships. And the only proof that they've shown that they've sunk anything was a frigate that was actually in training exercise in India. That's what they hit. They hit a U.S. or a Iranian frigate, you know, that didn't have any weapons on board. There was no ammunition on board because it just got done from a training exercise. That's what they hit, you know. And like everything else, though, well, they're going to pay the consequences. You see, the Most High is going to turn things up, you know, but I shall muster them up, right? The Lord of hosts to battle. The Lord of hosts to his battles, talking about the weapons of his indignation. Yeah, eventually this will be nuclear. But, you know, as World War III is there, you know, so is the financial collapse. Yeah, there's going to be a financial collapse, all right, because just for each Patriot missile that's shot off is about $1.2 billion, something like that. To where they're begging Ukraine for fucking drones now, you know, or, yeah, tactical drones to try to counter Iran's drones. So they're begging Ukraine for help when Trump already threatened to cut off Zelensky and has cut off Zelensky. Yeah, now he's begging Zelensky for help. That's how desperate they are. Because they just thought that they would go in and topple the Iranian regime by killing its leader, Ayatollah Khomeini. And what they've done is they have poked at the Medo-Persian Empire. They have provoked the bear one too many times. And now, what are they going to do to stop Putin from providing intelligence to them? What are they going to do to stop Putin? Oh, they've been trying to use Ukraine to weaken Putin, but that's only been making Russia stronger, and like everything else, though, Russia's going to become more involved, and so is China. They're going to become more involved with this, and it's going to be a lot more than just providing intelligence. Pretty much so. A lot of people are going to die in this war. Multitudes in the Valley of Decision, for the day of the Lord, Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai, is near in the Valley of Decision, which is what they like to call the Middle East, is there. In Syria, Iraq, Iran, this war, which, like everything else, though, Saddam Hussein did call it the mother of all battles years ago, meaning that there would be many more to come, because even he knew about the plot to go into Iran. He knew back then. They were using him for 8 years. In the Iran-Iraq war, the Gulf War was all funded by the U.S. and Israel. The CIA, Mossad, was using Iraq to bomb Iran. Then eventually, because after 8 years, the war was declared over with. And then they used a false flag. They told Saddam Hussein that they could have Kuwait, and then use the invasion of Kuwait as an excuse to attack Saddam Hussein. And then under the guise of weapons of mass destruction, after Iraq had already been leveled in Desert Storm, and there wasn't much left of the Republican Guard either. Iraq's Republican Guard was down to about 200 when they used to have the fourth largest army, was reduced to that, and a lot of the weapons had already been destroyed. Well, they used it, saying that they had weapons of mass destruction to go in and topple Iraq. But Iran is not like Iraq. Iran is already 3 times bigger, and even Alexander the Great was not able to conquer Persia back then. So what makes these Edomites, these faggots, think that they can actually do it, right? Because remember, it's gone a lot past don't ask, don't tell, right? What makes this LGBTQ, military think that they can just topple, Iran? In fact, a lot of them don't want to even fucking go into the front lines. People were exhausted on the aircraft carrier. I mentioned this last week, aircraft carrier. They were flushing the toilets just so they could get out of the sea because, they just conducted that operation against Maduro. These people are exhausted. And it's a never-ending war. And there's never-ending lies, that, Iran was going to get a nuclear weapon, was going to use it, And the only one that's ever threatened Iran has been the Israeli state, They're the ones that, it's called Operation True Promise, meaning that they've been attacked 4 times. It started with the consulate in, actually the killing of Soleimani. So this has been going on since 2020, right? The killing of General Soleimani, which Donald Trump led that. Well, to save Trump's ego, though, this is what it's about. This is what every Edomite's going to have to do, as well as the 2/3 Jakes that joined under Esau, is they're going to have to save his ego, because his ego is a little bit hurt, and he's very butthurt because, he's this man of peace wants you to go and die for him, to die for greater Israel. That's what it's really about. So his people on Wall Street, and on Gaza, remember his Gaza New Plan, phase 2 of the Gaza New Plan, so he can make lots of money while you go and die for him. That's basically what Donald Trump wants. This is what your king says, and hey, these people are going to plunge themselves into death fighting for the king of Babylon. And, when they exhaust them and they get their asses slaughtered, their asses handed to them, then they're going to institute the draft. The draft is coming. We've been talking about that for years, too, that they will reinstitute the draft. And it's coming because they're already talking about automatic signups. See, they made the whole thing digital. Selective services digital. So military personnel are going to be knocking on your doors, to get you to go and fight for them, telling you that your number's been selected. You've been selected to fight, So like everything else, so, it's coming in a time that this place will be confounded. So, as more and more people die in this war, because that's just the way that it is, says the king of Babylon. Well, it brings me to Revelation chapter 18. And Verse 19, they cast dust on their heads and cried, weeping and wailing, saying, Alas, alas, that great city, wherein were made rich all that had ships in the sea. By reason of her pestilence, for in 1 hour is she made desolate. It's only going to take 1 hour to make this place wholly desolate. You already seen what Iran could do to the military bases over there. You already seen what's happened to the Israeli state. Tel Aviv is just totally looks like Gaza, and parts of Jerusalem, lots of other places that they hit. But you're not getting a lot of information out of the Israeli state, because no, that would weaken morale. Well, they don't want your morale to be weakened, you know, because they want you to fight for them, because you're fighting for the truth just as the American way. You see how much that's diminished. Rejoice over her, thou heaven, and you holy apostles, the prophets, for Yahweh hath avenged you on her. And that's just it. We're silent crying for the abominations committed. And the Most High, Yahweh Shai hears us, and he's speeding this thing up. And a mighty angel took up a stone, like great millstone, and cast it into the sea, saying thus, with violence shall that great city Babylon be thrown down, and shall be found no more at all. So, it's coming. The destruction is coming to Babylon. The weapons of his indignation, the cup of wrath of his indignation is coming for all that are partakers in Babylon, and especially those that take, you know what, and they're going to mandate it very soon, especially with a fallen economy. Oh man, that's a perfect crisis. They're going to use this as a perfect crisis, a perfect storm to usher it in. Revelation chapter 14, verse 8. And there followed another angel, saying, Babylon has fallen, that great city, because she made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. You know, they were all made rich through her abundancies, right? Through her, you know, but they're going to be weeping when this place gets cast into the fowls of the earth. It's going to be destroyed in 1 hour. And the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, If any man worship the beast and his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the implantable C-hip, you know, the MOTB, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of the Most High, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. It's inevitable that there will be a nuclear war soon, you know, and this will go nuclear because they're challenging a nuclear power. Russia is already involved. And like everything else, though, you know what that superpower is going to do. Most High Yahweh and the angel is going to send Yahweh Shai and the angels. And, of course, these weapons of his indignation to bring down Babylon. The same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of the Most High Yahweh, which is poured out into the mixture to the cup of his indignation, and shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. So that it's a done deal. The smoke of their torment ascendeth up forever and ever. They have no rest day nor night, who worship the beast in his image, and whosoever receiveth the mark of his name, the implantable microchip, which will be mandated. They got the crisis already. The economy is gone. Kuwait, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, the very thing that makes the petrodollar, Qatar, all these places that, you know, are part of the Gulf countries that make the petrodollar. Well, they don't want to deal with Babylon anymore. So you already see in the beginning stages of this, and this war is going to continue to pick up. See, we're just here, you know, warning you about what's to come, and now you see it coming. So we're past the great I told you so. We already were in 2020 when we said they would have a worldwide lockdown, and sure enough, you know, they used the CVID hoax to do so. You know, CVID wasn't even real, but they used it to get everybody to vaccinate. How much more to get everybody to take the implantable device? Because you're not going to be able to, all your accounts are going to be frozen very soon. Places are already pushing you to go cashless. So all your accounts frozen. And the government's going to mandate that everybody have this in order to be able to commerce. Everything's going to be locked up, you know. So like everything else, though, we've been warning you what's to come. You know, and you take that MOTB, you take that implantable device, you'll be caught into the cup of wrath of his indignation, meaning the thermonuclear destruction that shall consume Babylon and make it no more. You see, it's happening, you know, right before our very eyes. So hopefully this is the year. And as we always say, though, you know, repent now while you still have time, because eventually we ain't going to be able to do this much longer. Hey, you know, when all hell fucking breaks loose, you think we're going to be out there on the streets anymore? No. We're just going to be waiting on the Most High. You're going to try and find us, and you won't be able to. Why? Because chaos will be everywhere. You're already seeing the uproars of the people worldwide. Just wait till this thing picks up. And it will. It will. This is just phase 2. This is week 2 of World War III. So hopefully this has all been edifying. For that I want to say Bracha the Yahweh, Bracha the Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rekakadash, Wa Abab Abal. Brakatum to your hopeful elect. Shalom.